3-5, yeah.
Uh-huh.
I raise in, I guess it'd be like the low jack or the cut or the high jack with ace two of clubs,
Okay.
and I get called by the button and the big blind. Button is very loose. Big blind is a winning player, very thoughtful, very kind of. I mean, he's not screwing around.
So you make it 20.
I make it 20, yes.
And how deep are you guys?
Um, say say 11 to 1200. I'm not sure exactly. I think we're both about the same. I have them covered. It's not super deep.
Right. And then you've got this whole like 600 per bet or 600 per street
Yeah.
thing, some weird thing,
Yes.
right? And talking stick. Okay. So you make
Yes.
it 20 from the cutoff with ace deuce of clubs and the button and the big blind call. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, the flop comes king of clubs, six of hearts, four of clubs.
King of clubs, six of hearts, four of clubs. Okay.
Did you get it? I'm sorry. You say king of clubs,
Six of
six of
hearts,
hearts,
four
four
clubs.
clubs. Yeah.
Right. So you got the
Okay.
nut flush
So
draw.
yeah, I bet 40. Just figure out. I have a king. I can represent a king credibly here, and have some full equity against just lower pairs. I get called by both guys pretty quickly.
Bets 40, call. So 120 in on the flop, and now the pot's like 180, right?
Something like that, yeah. Let me see, 41, yeah, about 180. Um, turn is a seven of clubs.
Oh, that's a nice card for you.
Yeah, and I think one of them is have a flush sometimes here, along with me.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way it went down. I mean, they both have a king. There's not a lot of draws out there besides clubs. I mean, unless someone's overcalling, with like a six. I feel like someone's got a flush here, a lot. Just the way that the distribution of the board is. Maybe a straight draw and a king is possible, but I do think that I'm up against possibly another strong hand here.
It was the deuce?
So
What was the turn again? Seven of clubs, right? Seven of clubs.
seven of clubs,
Right,
yeah.
right,
So
right.
it fits into
Okay.
some straight draws,
Yep.
but obviously I have the nuts. So I mean,
Right.
what are you thinking as far as sizing here, and what are you hoping to accomplish? Um,
I
you
mean,
know,
well, so again, it's sort of a newer school thought with turn sizing and stuff. I mean, this was something that I used to do anyways, like back in the day. But you're supposed to somewhat, although it is multi-way, so these things are sometimes hard to figure out if you're looking at the newer school stuff about like what sizing you're supposed to take against two people. But I just say as a looking at this board, king six four seven, right? You've got the ace deuce of clubs. That somebody's got king X here, and if you bet at least 150, upwards of pot, you're still not going to get a fold. I don't feel like from king X. Maybe somebody in the big blind like overfolds like king X. If you bet and the button calls and the guy in the big blind has like king five of hearts or whatever, well, that would be a straight draw. King deuce of hearts, maybe he folds, right? But really, you're trying to, like you said, you're just trying to target. You're trying to bet large. I think basically, with a nut hand. And then, the theory is well, how do you balance that? Well, you're supposed to be making this bet with like ace queen with the ace of clubs. If you started that bet right on the flop, with the
yeah.
stiff ace of clubs. So I would be betting at least 150 here.
Okay. I feel like a lot of kings just fold here if they don't have a club with it. I mean, maybe in this game, maybe more, especially the big blind would. The button might still call. He's a little looser player. I did the opposite. I bet really small, thinking I just have the nuts here, hoping that someone with a club would raise me, with clubs would raise me if they had smaller clubs.
So
Or
what did you
maybe they
bet?
would just think I'm full of 55, which is probably way too small.
55?
Yeah.
Well, that's certainly going to get calls from a that's certainly going to get calls from a king. I mean, if you were to take that line of betting 55 here, like I said, I think I would go much larger. If you get a call, especially from next to act, I just hope that you could just go gigantic on the river.
Yeah, that was the plan. I was going to bet really bad in the river on a blank.
So you bet 55, and what happened?
Yeah, the button folds, and then the good player check raises to 200.
Oh, wow. Button
Yeah.
folds, big blind, who he said is the good player, check raises to 200. Now, this isn't as clear cut as if the button had called and the big blind, who's the good player, raised to 200, because if that was the case, the big blind probably is just never bluffing, right? But here, the button is out of the hand you have sort of bet kind of small, and maybe he thinks like you're a bet folder. So, I mean, it's
Yeah.
possible there could be some bluffs here. And it looks like if you were to call here, the pot's 580, you guys will have like something like maybe 800 left. I mean, you could just, jam across a bet, on the river, just sort of hope that the board doesn't pair. It's interesting, like this spot, like, do you ever have three bets here at the stack depth? I mean, going back to basics, like if I think that someone's just going to always like get in with me, I just get in with me. But I would probably say that this is a call here. I mean, I would, because
Yeah,
you're
I just
really
feel like
not
my hand's
jamming any
too
other
obvious
hands, right?
if I raise back, right? I think
Yeah,
my
I
hand's
mean,
just too obvious if I raise back.
right, you're not even jamming, like if
Um,
you had queen jack of clubs here, you're probably not even jamming back, right?
yeah, no, I'm not. I don't
Yeah,
think of a hand that I would raise besides the nuts.
yeah.
So unless I thought that he was full of it and I had the ace of clubs. So there's really not. So yeah, I think it's a call.
Hmm.
But obviously the pot's not that big. It's hard to get value. We've kind of set ourselves up to not get full value versus another flush. I do think he gets a flush here a lot. I actually called, and then when I texted you, I think I put the wrong river. The river wasn't on a club; it was like a 10 of clubs. So obviously it's a bad card for me.
Well, again, I mean, you look
But
at these situations like what you just said. I'll pull out what you just said. Like you think he has a flush here, like a lot, and then, well, then the issue that now is that if he's always going to get in with you, but we can't. I mean, that's an assumption that I have made some big assumptions, and one of the other things too. And I got on that guy a few calls ago for making that what I thought was almost borderline ridiculous assumption that this guy was going to call him versus a back four bet. Just single raising what looked like King X. But if you were to make the assumption that he always has a flush, then now you're just gambling on the fact that, the board doesn't pair, right? Which there are 3, 6, 9, 12 board pairing cards. You guys have four of the clubs. So there's 7 clubs, right, that are dead. So that's another 6. So there can be 6 clubs that can come, right? Because you two have 4 in between you, and there's 3 on the board. And then there's another 3, 6, 9, 12 board pairing cards. So that's that's almost half the deck. That's probably 40% of the deck. So I think a lot of times people don't recognize actually how many action card killers can come. Maybe because this is a pretty extreme example, right? I mean, if you both hold flushes, you're really only getting a clean river, some of the time. And then, whether it's debatable, sometimes if somebody has a set or something, some sort of one-liner comes like a 5 or an 8 if they shut down, something like that.
yeah,
Or like he thinks he's good with like 2 pair because of your small sizing with like 7, 6, and then he slows down like with an offsuit queen or an offsuit ace or something like that. So that's why I always say, like, if I think that somebody wants to get it in with me, I'll get it in with them. But then we've got these other things going on where he could be bluffing or something like this. So I assume that he checks here. That would really be the only thing that makes a whole lot of sense, right?
yeah, he checks the river. Yeah, the
Yeah.
pot's like what 580.
Yeah. So checks
So
the river. So big blind checks. And now the question is what your sizing is, right?
It was a concern check too.
So you really think he has a
You know,
flush, right?
I think he had something pretty strong. Whether maybe he turned a straight. I mean, that could be possible too, or he had a flush. I mean, I don't know.
Let me ask you that. So this is an old school thought here too. I mean, it's very, very rare that it ever comes up, but I've mentioned it in episodes before. The question here is that if you had pocket kings, now maybe you would check the turn, right? Because if you had pocket kings and you were concerned, this is always the whole thing with top set, right? The board's king 6-4. If you have pocket kings and you bet and you get 2 calls and the turn's a 7 of clubs, that's not a great card for you, Andrew, right? Because you're blocking all the kings. Right. Now, let's say that you had like pocket 6s though, right? And you're like, all right, I'm still going to bet here because and I unblock king X, right? So it's king 6-4, I had pocket 6s, I bet. And now I get check raised on turn, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to try to boat up here on the 7 of clubs turn. And now the river's the 10 of clubs, and then the guy checks. What would you do here with 6s on the river?
Gosh, I don't know. I'd like to think I had a bluff in me, turn it into a bluff, but I don't know if I would.
I mean, that's
fold, for the same reason why I want to value bet here.
I mean, that's really what the issue is here is that would you ever turn a set into a bluff here? What combos, what is he supposed to be calling down with in terms of high clubs? The reason why I asked that is because, like, if you were to bet, and I'm in this good players spot, I'm like, Jesus, what fucking bluff does he have here? You know what I mean? But I still think that I would probably still go. I mean, when people make 2-card flushes and then they roll, that's another old school CLP thought. When they roll and sort of get counterfeit with a 4th flush card, it's real. They find it very, very hard to fold. I would still probably go upwards of 400 to 500 here, something like that.
I mean, put yourself in like if you were in this guy's shoes and you were playing against me, you're out of position, so you turn to flush, and you did check raise the turn, and I 3-bet you, you're gonna fold, or you're gonna probably find a fold sometimes with like 9-8 of clubs, right?
Oh,
think about the turn,
I mean,
Bill.
I don't know. I mean, boy, that would be one hell of an exploitable fold to check raise fold the flush against a 3-bet. But what kind of sizing did you use here at the end?
I bet small because I figure there's 4 clubs on the board now. I bet 200 because I figure I'll cover everything, and a small flush might just be curious, but obviously there's 4 clubs on the board, so I bet 200 into 5.
And
he called.
Did you ever find out what he had?
No, I didn't. He looked a little frustrated, but no, he just reloaded some money and that was it. But I was just thinking about there's going to be more value in his hand somewhere. It just felt like that when I played it.
Well, I mean, you got very unlucky, right? You got very unlucky with the river, I think, run out. The interesting thing here is the river runs out like an offsuit 10, and let's say that he bets, I don't know, 350 on the river and you shove. Is he gonna call off? I mean, that looks really strong too, right?
Yeah, it sure does.
You know, so
yeah, I mean, it's just the way the cards went out, maybe, but like, and maybe just when in doubt, just fast play your hand a little bit. What would you raise to if you did 3-bet the turn? I mean, how would you play it?
Well, if you check raise to 200, and then you had what, like 800 left in your stack or something, right? 800 left in your stack. Are you allowed to? Are you allowed to move all in, or would you only be able to make it 600 on top?
600 more than his bet. Yeah, I can make it 950 if you made 350. Yeah,
I think that the other option is just to move all in or do whatever the max bet is, and then people just aren't going to check raise fold a flush. I actually think if you were to run this scenario, even if he's a good player, you'll probably find that you would make more money by getting it in on the turn against a made flush than the times that you just call and then you have this sort of 40% of the time action card killer come where you just get a check call. Now, I understand that that's a little bit unbalanced because it's like, well, what bluffs do we have? And the theory might go that I guess you would 3-bet the ace of clubs some of the time here too, if somebody check raised you, but we probably wouldn't do that because we wouldn't expect them to fold. But I just think that if you actually run that, even against a good player, if you run that scenario, it's just awfully hard for them to fold, even though you might not even have like a bluff button in there. But
against a really good player, I'm more likely to call here, and against a bad player, I'm more likely to 3-bet because they don't fold as much.
Sure.
That's kind of my thought.
Sure. Yeah. Anyways, I appreciate the call, Andrew. Thank you very much.
Yeah, man. Take care.
All right. If you like what you've seen here, please hit the subscribe button. And if you enjoyed this call-in hand, hit the like button down below. To check out crushlivepoker.com, click on the link in the description. Use the code YTA300 to get the first 30 days for free.